So just now we have to pray for all of being. So let's recite our sutras, Metta Sutra, Bandi.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Yasanubhavato
Okay, this is a Pali chant, so this is not our sutra.
Yanyisevanurosando Radediwa Madandito Sukha Sukari Sorosa Babankansi Nabasati Ewa Madi Gunu Bedang Praitandam Panamahi Karaniya Matakusalena Yanda Sandam Badam Abhitamisa Tako Uzuza Suzuza Suvaso Satamuru Anadi Mani Sando Tagosa Subarosa Abagabot Puledoa Nanu Gaido Nasa Kota Masi Kaisi Yena when you pray Uba Udiyom Tukinowa Kimino Wantu Sabasada Puantu Sukisada Yekesi Pana Buddhati Tadawa Tawarawa Nawadida Digawa Iwa Manda Bisimaradaka Duga Tulang Taitawa Iwa Adita Yewa Dre Watandi Awi Dure Buddhawa Sambue Siwa Sabasada Pondu Sukhi Sada Na Propranika Beta Nadi Minita Kadasina Kaisi Pyayodana Pliga Dinya Ninya Minyata Dukha Mesiyang Madayada Niya Buddha Mayuda Ega Buddha Maduraki Evam Disabha Buddhedu Manatam Bhavi Aprimanam Medesa Sabha Loka Samay Manatam Bhavi Aprimanam Auranosa Tiririnsa Adamara Aviya Matapadam Taitan Sayani Sainowa Siano Yawa Tata Vida Medo Edan Daitiya Pyamamita Vihara Mida Mahu Daitaisa Lupakama Silawa Tatanina Sambano Kamitu Vinaya Gedana Isado Kapasiya Punareti Eti Bido Bhagawa Arahan Sama Sambuddho
This is Metta
Vaisasrana Samano Sugado Loga Vidu
Anotaro Purisa loving kindness.
Tatariwa Manokana Bodo Bhagawan Swekado Bhagavata Dhammo Sandetiko Akaliko Eipatiko Paniko Pesata Virita Bo Viyui Saubri Pano Bhagavato Samvaka Sango Udaubri Pano Bhagavato Samvaka Sango Nyayabri Pano Bhagavato Samvaka Sango Kame Saibri Pano Bhagavato Samvaka Sango Yarira Satari Purisa Yuani Eta Purisa Bhagala Eta Bhagavato Samvaka Sango Auneo, Pauneo, Tagineo, Insari Grandio, Anodran, Bonya Ketan, Lokata, Ewa Bodandran, Dana, Damatangisa, Beko, Payawa, Samita, Tawa, Lomando, Naitadi, Yandoni, Medawa, Mingalisa, Yosamana, Poskunata, Sado, Pabego, Dosupina, Agandang, Poda, Nuba, Wina, Samindu, Yandoni, Medawa, Mingalisa, Yosamana, Poskunata, Sado, Pabego, Dosupina, Agandang, Dhamma, Nuba, Wina, Samindu, Yandoni, Medawa, Mingalisa, Yosamana, Poskunata, Sado, Pabego dosubina agandang, Sangha nuba wina samindu, Pawadu tapa mingala rakandu tapa dewata, Sapa Buddha nuba wina dratuki bondu de, Pawadu tapa mingala rakandu tapa dewata, Sapa Dhamma nuba wina dratuki bondu de, Pawadu tapa mingla rekandu tapa diwata, Tapa sangha nuba wena sada sukhi bondu de. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
May you be happy, Bande, for all of human beings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All from Burma. Right. Now next. Panchaparamita Sutra.
Heart Sutra.
Heart Sutra. Chinese.
In Chinese language. Heart Sutra.
So historically, I think Buddha's first Dharma wheel, I think eventually about the Four Noble Truth, that is Pali. I think the Pali tradition that come from that. Now the what you call Bodhisattva Yana, that is at Rajgir. It's a Buddha, also the second Dharma wheel. That is Panchaparamita Sutra. So, I think the country which received Panchaparamita Sutra first, I think they, yes, I think almost like 2,000 years. The Chinese. So, among the people who recite Heart Sutra, the senior most is Chinese Buddhist brothers, sisters. 자자가 덕이야, 더 빨리 탈이야.
His Holiness, returning back to Tibetan, what
Burmese.
said in English. So His Holiness says this is a sutra of auspicience in Pali that they have recited. And Pali tradition is actually the foundation of all the Buddha's teachings. And the external appearance visible to all who came in contact with him, Buddha had spoken hard to attain enlightenment. And based on that, she gave the teachings of the Four Noble Truths and so forth. And later, in the second verse of his teaching, he turned the will of the Prajnaparamita Sutra, or the Wisdom of Perfection Sutra. And later on, these sutras came to be flourished in different parts of the world. And of all those, apart from India, China seems to have received the Mahayana tradition after that. So much before Buddhism came into Tibet, China has maybe around 200 or 300 years before established Buddha Dharma in China. So as for the tradition of Mahayana, China is much more senior. Actually, the senior most students after the Indians. So because of that, we are going to recite Heart Sutra in Chinese right now. Thus, I have heard, at one time, the Blessed One was sitting on Vulture's Peak in the city of Rajgir. He was accompanied by a large community of monks as well as large community of bodhisattvas. On that occasion, the Blessed One was absorbed in a particular concentration called the profound appearance. Meanwhile, the Bodhisattva, the great being, the noble Avalokiteshvara, was contemplating the profound discipline of the perfection of wisdom. He came to see that the five aggregates were empty of any inherent nature of their own. Through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra approached the noble Avalokiteshvara and asked him, how should a son of the noble lineage proceed when he wants to train in the profound discipline of the perfection of wisdom? The noble Avalokiteshvara replied to the Venerable Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the noble lineage wants to train in the profound discipline of the perfection of wisdom should consider things in the following ways. First, he or she should clearly and thoroughly comprehend that the five aggregates or the five psychophysical elements are empty of their own inherent or independent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, and form is not other than emptiness. Similarly, feeling, discernment, compositional factors, and consciousness are also empty. Likewise, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty. They have no defining characteristic. They are unproduced. They do not cease. They are undefiled, yet they are not separate from defilement. They do not decrease, yet they do not increase. This being the case, Shariputra, in terms of emptiness, there exist no forms, no feelings, no discernments, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no noses, no tongues, no bodies, no minds, no visual forms, no sounds, no smells, no taste, no tactile sensations, no mental objects. There exists no visual form, no visual elemental, no mental element until no existence of mental consciousness. There exists no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, no aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. In the same way, there exists no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no lack of attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since bodhisattvas have no attainment, they depend upon and dwell in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds are unobstructed and unafraid. They transcend all error and finally reach the end point, nirvana. All the Buddhas of the past, present, and future have depended, do and will depend upon the perfection of wisdom. Thereby, they became, are becoming, and will become unsurpassably, perfectly, and completely awakened Buddhas. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is a mantra of great knowledge. It is an unsurpassable mantra. It is a mantra that is comparable to the incomparables. It is a mantra that totally pacifies all sufferings. It will not deceive you. Therefore, know it to be true. I proclaim the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. Tayatha gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhiya soha Shariputra. It is in this way the great bodhisattvas train themselves in the profound perfection of wisdom. At that moment, the Blessed One arose from his concentration and said to the noble Avalokiteshvara, "Well said, well said. That is just how it is, my son, just how it is. The profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced exactly as you have been explained. Then the one gone thus will be truly delighted." When the Blessed One has spoken these words, the Venerable Shariputra and the Bodhisattvas, the great beings, the noble Avalokiteshvara, and the entire gatherings of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas were overjoyed, and they praise what the Blessed One has said. This completes reading the translation of Heart Sutra. Those three lamas in line. The first one is the throne holder, or the representative of Lama Tsongkhapa. The second one is a bamboo hat. The third one is Dalung Sheptung Rinpoche. And these are the Chinese who are reciting the Heart Sutra. Tanda tuzu yoro. There are 4 lines of prayers after the Chinese Heart Sutra. Well, may all their 3 delusions be eliminated, and may the wisdom of wisdom of emptiness glow. And may all the external and internal obstacles be eliminated or pacified. And may I be able to engage in the bodhisattva deeds. So the first two lines speaks of the attainment of the certain states or liberation and enlightenment. And this pacification of delusions cannot be attained just through prayers, but through the practice of wisdom. And because of that, it prays that may I be able to, may the wisdom of emptiness grow in me. And for that, there are lots of external, internal problems, and therefore may the obstacles be pacified. And finally, it says, may I be able to engage in the bodhisattva deeds. So this short prayer actually encompasses a lot of the practice of Buddha Dharma. Now after this is the chanting in Vietnam, Vietnamese chanting. Looks like the Vietnamese are also chanting the Heart Sutra. Traditionally, Vietnam is also not only a Buddhist but a Mahayana Buddhist country.
Tam thế chư bà y ba nhã ba la mận đa cô đăng hà đậu đà la tam biểu tam bồ đề cô di ba nhã la vận đa đi đại đăng chô đi đại minh chô đi vô thượng chô đi vô đăng đăng chô đăng chơ nhớ đê ngô nhớ đê ba ngơ ngô đê ba nhã ba la mận đa chô đăng đê chô bê hên đê ba la hên đê ba la đăng hên đê bồ đề ta ba tiêu thái kết tổ toàn chô nam mô tam mang đà mâu đà nam ma bát đà đề a đà 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 đề ta ông ông nhâm ba đà nhâm ba đà ban đà nhâm ba đà ban đà nhâm đề tăng đà đề tăng đà tăng đề đề đà đề đề đà ban đà 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 đề đề ca đề đề ta nguyện trú kiếp tường gia kiếp tường trú gia lũng thời ăn kiếp tường nhân thiên thời trung kiếp tường gia nguyện chư thượng sư đó nguyện trú kiếp tường gia kiếp tường trú gia lũng thời ăn kiếp tường nhân thiên thời trung kiếp tường gia nguyện như tam bảo nhiệm thọ nguyện trú kiếp tường gia kiếp tường trú gia lũng thời ăn kiếp tường nhân thiên thời trung kiếp tường gia nguyện chư hộ pháp tường ủng hộ nam mô tiêu tai giang kiếp tường bồ tát nam mô tiêu tai giang kiếp tường bồ tát nam mô tiêu tai giang kiếp tường bồ tát.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. Very good. Very good. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay. Oh. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Vietnam. There are so many Vietnamese refugees in different parts of the world. Wherever they are living, they have preserved their own traditions and religion, and they have been really successful in that respect. And in the meantime, there are lots of Buddhists even from Vietnam coming here, and they have really deep devotion and strong faith in Buddha Dharma. Now, there is no need for us to recite the Heart Sutra, just a stanza. The homage to the mother of all the three Buddhas, which is inconceivable, unspeakable, and which is not born, which doesn't cease. So that's the meaning of the stanza. And after that, there is the homage to the three paths that gave rise to three kinds of liberations. One who has taught dependent origination as having no cessation or the rising. So all the 8 aspects of emptiness, one who has propounded these truths, I venerate to the noble being. That's Nagarjuna's stanza in foundation of the root of wisdom sutra, wisdom treatise. The first one speaks of the mantra, which is some Buddhists. It means that from now onwards, for maybe 6-7 days, we'll conduct some teachings, and the sequence of our procedure towards enlightenment is being spoken in this context of the mantra. Right now, the situation is that we have delusions, not only delusions, but we seem to willingly embrace the delusions, and we do not think of its negativities, but we consider them to be our own natural part. And when we have our anger, we seem as if it is defending us. It is in nature to be angry and confronted. And then if we have some conducive factors, we are naturally attached to it, and we feel quite natural about it. So we are almost like embracing willingly the delusions. So from this stage, we should transcend a little bit and then think that the delusions are actually negativities to be eliminated, to be abandoned. And after recognizing the fault of the delusions, then gradually we have to abandon them and finally completely eliminate them forever. So whether or not you can actually do that or is something we really need to consider or we need to analyze. So in that respect, we have to look at the nature of the delusions. And attachment and anger arises of ignorance. Ignorance is a misperception, misunderstanding, distorted view. So long as it's a distorted view, misperception, it has its own antidote, which understands or apprehends the reality. So long as it's a distorted thought, there is always an antidote mind. So thinking of the nature of the ignorance, if you look at its nature, it's something that can be eliminated. On top, if you look at the nature of the mind as luminous, and its clarity or cognitive nature, then you can actually think of the possibility that actually it is possible to relieve us of all the delusions. Then we actually come to this first stage, gate. So from this first, our original stage of ordinariness, we go to the first level, gate. So where we start abandoning or pacifying our delusions with a vision of the state free from all these fabricated delusions. And then when we speak of the second gate, the actual antidote to get rid of ignorance or the delusions is the view of emptiness, the wisdom mind. So wisdom mind is something which understands perfectly the reality as it is. So when once you attain the spontaneous meditative stability based on emptiness, then you reach the third gate. And one, through constant familiarization, habituation, when you reach the state of non-dualistic appearance of emptiness, where the mind abides completely non-dualistically in emptiness, then it becomes paragate. So when you have direct perception of emptiness, you have achieved the path of seeing or path of insight. So at that time, you are able to get rid of the grosser level of delusions which are philosophically or conceptually imputed, or philosophically acquired delusions are eliminated completely. And for that to happen, we have to practice the path of truth of path, and thereby constantly habituating the truth of path or wisdom of emptiness. And slowly we can also think of eliminating the innate spontaneous delusions. So then we reach the parasamgate. So in Mahayana, the innate spontaneous delusions and their latencies or potentials or stains or imprints, when all these are eliminated completely, then it has the attainment of Buddhist soha. So therefore, Tantrayana is a method to achieve the Buddhist soha or the complete enlightenment. So this is an additional kind of part in order to attain the complete enlightenment. So in the following days, we will be having the teaching. Actually, this is the sequence by which we are going to move forward towards enlightenment. The fact that the mind is naturally in the nature of purity. We speak, and it's important thing on that. We speak in Sutrayana that that there should be natural purity in order to have the purity of the mind. So since we have natural purity, mind can also be naturally pure. And because of that natural purity, then we can actually actualize cessation of all the delusions. And that fact that the delusions are advantages also add to this understanding. So whether it's the attainment of liberation, or in this respect, when connected with Kalachakra, is the attainment of 4 kayas, or the kaya, or 4 bodies, or 4 states of Kalachakra. So that is what we call as Buddhya Soha. So this has a lot of significance. So this is a mantra of Sutra, or the essence of wisdom. So in order to achieve this wisdom, we have the method side, which we have the 3 parts where which are illuminated in the supplication of the ornament of clear realization by Maitreya, the 3 parts, the parts of Hinayana, the parts of Mahayana, 2 parts of Hinayana Maya, and that of Mahayana 3. So that's what we have recited, and I don't feel we need to go more into reciting verses. So first we repeat taking the refuge mind, and we recite taking the refuge mind and generation of bodhicitta. We have come here not for business purpose, or there's a danger of getting flu, and we have not come here to buy flu. Earlier, when we used to come here, earlier it was almost certain that when once you come here for a pilgrimage, in my case, it was certain that I would get a flu. But this time, actually, I'm quite healthy. Of course, there is some kind of discomfort that sometimes it's really hot, sometimes it's quite cold, and then we have a lot of difficulties. Perhaps you might be remembering your own horns behind, and when you are wet by the or drenched by the rain, you also might miss your own warm rooms or home. So, despite all these difficulties, the fact that you have come here is because we have this devotion, faith, and conviction in Buddha's teachings. And as we have discussed in this mantra, the part of accumulation, preparation, insight, meditation, and then part of normal training. In order to transcend through this part, this is the first beginning through which we should go forward. So through this kind of religious teaching, for it to be effective from the part of the teacher, the motivation should be really pure. I should not be arrogant by sitting on this big throne. I should not wish for any kind of praise or offerings or fame. If I fall into these kind of extremes of delusional minds, and then I will be following, even though I'm not going to give a teaching, I will be cheating people or lying, or I will be be drawn with the attitude of all worldly and eight worldly pursuits. And so of course you might not have any pride being on that ground, but still you might want to cheat or boast of having attained, having received this teaching, and then you might also think that you might also you might to some extent exploit other people, claiming that you have received teachings of His Holiness, and with a mass of religious practice, you should not deceive people. So from the side of the students, if the motivation is not pure, then all our energies put forward are waste. So from both sides, from the side of the teacher as well as the students, there should be pure motivation. So what does pure motivation means is, it should be motivated by the refuge mind, and when motivated by, when complemented by the refuge mind, the practice become a Buddhist practice. When you speak of Buddha, we tend to think only from the historical perspective, the portrait of Buddha Shakyamuni that we display in the altars or in the monasteries or in the temples. And also, if you speak or think of the text to be the actual Dharma that we put on the altars, and then when we think of the monks as the actual Sangha, then these are mistakes. Of course, we can refer them as Sangha, even though they may not be actual Sangha. So what does Buddha means? Buddha, according to all the Buddhist tradition, is the one who is in the who has manifested in the emanation form. But in this context of Mahayana, we are speaking of the Buddha with 4 states, 4 aspects. For the enjoined body, there should be the Dharmakaya and Jnanakaya should be there, and then Rupakaya all arises. So all these are interconnected. The Buddha with 4 states. It's important for you to understand the nature of Buddha in this context. So when you speak of Dharma, through the realizations and the quality of cessation within the Buddha, these kind of cessation are the ultimate form of Dharma. To attain these kind of Dharmas, from the time of the trainees, since the path of seeing, you start abandoning or pacifying the delusions. So all those pacifiers and all those saves nature are the dharmas. So those beings who have these realizational and cessational qualities, these are known as sangha. So in this Mahayana tradition, we should think of the Mahayana Buddha, Mahayana Dharma, and Mahayana Sangha. So with this in mind, then we take refuge. The reason why we take refuge in them is to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Until I attain enlightenment, I take refuge. So we say until enlightenment. So the reason is for attaining enlightenment, even though we can speak of liberation or enlightenment in different contexts, even though there are different kinds of enlightenment, in this context, we are speaking of the great enlightenment. In Sublime Continuum, we speak of the 7 spots of Vajra, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, element, then enlightenment. So from our own, from our part, as the cause of refuge, we take in the Buddhas who have already arisen in that perfect state. And the reason or the purpose is for one's own attainment of future Buddha and future Dharma. And this can only happen if we have the element or the essential of Buddha nature within us, which is devoid of this kind of Buddha nature when purified for all the advantageous stains. That kind of purified nature is what we call as Buddha. So until enlightenment, I take refuge. If we have this kind of understanding of enlightenment, then that's a Mahayana kind of attitude of taking refuge, aspiration of taking refuge. So this kind of practice should be complemented by the superior insight and that of single-pointed concentrative quality. So the bodhicitta mind and the 6 perfections complemented, practice of perfection complemented by the bodhicitta. Through this practice, may I become a Buddha, and may all the activities that I engage in become causes for the attainment of highest enlightenment. So in order to benefit sentient beings, may I become a Buddha. So this is the meaning of these 2 verses. So if you have these, so then you can take Buddha as the instructor, the Dharma as its actual instruction, and one we actually need to actualize within us, and the Sangha as an example to follow. Then as for bodhicitta, it is one that transcends the lower path where we engage in the practice of relieving or relieving all others' sufferings. So from the part of the Lama on the throne, there should be motivation, and all the disciples or students listening should also have the same kind of attitude. And with this kind of aspiration, we should conduct the teachings. So we are going to recite these verses together 3 times. To Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until enlightenment, I take refuge in you. Through the practice of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. To Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until enlightenment, I take refuge in you. By the power of accumulations like generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. To Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until enlightenment, I take refuge in you. By the power of accumulations like generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit for all sentient beings. So today being the first day, this is the proclamation of the part of the Lama, giving permission to all the celestials, non-humans, to come forward and listen to the teachings. So usually, traditionally, this is recited by the Lamas when they have sufficient time, and he's only used to do the practice on occasions when he had sufficient time or for some special occasions. And this is one. This is actually found in one of the sutras, Supplication to Buddha Shakyamuni, who had propounded the interdependent origination based on his experience. This supplication is found in Nagarjuna's text. So today, as we have discussed about it a little bit earlier, actual Dharma is something that you should cultivate internally. It is not something that you can do externally or through external appearance. So because of that, whether your mind is directed towards Dharma, if your mind is actually directed towards Dharma, then it becomes an actual Dharma practice. The Buddha's teaching should be supported by the refuge mind, and if it's supported or motivated by that mind, then it becomes a Buddhist practice. For example, refraining from the non-virtuous activities like lying, adultery, killing, and so forth. All the rest of the religious practitioners like Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, all of them have, to some extent, the practice of abiding by the 10 virtuous activities and pacifying the non-virtuous activities. So this is a common kind of practice. When it comes to the practice of pleasing the local deity spirits or not, this is a different kind of practice. Other than that, refraining from harming others, practicing loving compassion and contentment, these kind of teachings, plus the 10 virtuous activities, these are being practiced by all religious traditions, major religious traditions. So, preceded by the motivation of taking refuge, then whatever you do becomes a Buddhist practice. Non-Buddhist practitioners take refuge in the Ishvara or in their own deities, and then therefore, based on this kind of refuge mind, they engage in the practice of superior practice of meditation and obedience. Also, these are kind of non-Buddhist practice. In the same manner, Buddhist practice can become only Buddhist practice if it is complemented by the refuge mind. Then the reason we are practicing Dharma is in order to attain enlightenment. For a Mahayana to be for a Mahayana practitioner, for his practice to be a Mahayana practice, it should be complemented by bodhicitta aspiration. So with a selfish motive, no matter whatever kind of Mahayana teachings you might try to implement, they will never become Mahayana practice. So therefore, the refuge is one practice that surpasses our practice from the lower ones, from the non-Buddhist, and bodhicitta is one that surpasses from the lower parts. So for our practice to become concrete, even though we may not achieve or accomplish realizations instantly, it's important for us to lay the ground or the foundation. For example, if you are to do a construction, first you need to find the spot and then try to level the spot, and then we plan the map of the building to be constructed, and as we acquire more facilities, then we start building it slowly. So this is some kind of progress of constructing our paths towards enlightenment. So if you work hard and precisely prepare, then it will really happen. Blessing to be attained, you have to exert your own pressure. You have to do your own activity in order to acquire blessing. It cannot come to you naturally. Even when Buddha Shakyamuni was here, those who have no devotion and faith in Buddha Shakyamuni, they didn't get much blessing from him. So real blessing comes. As is in the saying of Kadamba masters, that whether or not the Lama has a greater blessing depends entirely on the students and not the Lama. The Buddha Shakyamuni says, Buddhas do not really wash out negativities, nor can he transfer his own attainments, or neither can he lift you from our ordinary states. But through his teachings of truth, we can only attain enlightenment. So in this respect, it's important for us to be cautious, to be mindful of all our activities and practice properly. So when I do conduct religious stations, I try to give an introductory notes on Buddhism. This is very important because without really understanding what Dharma is, you cannot practice Dharma properly. So first you need to recognize or know what actually Dharma is about, the Dharma that you are going to practice is all about. So therefore, in order to give an introduction to Dharma, basically it goes like this. We have so many different religious traditions in this world, so we need to know the differences of these religious traditions and the unique qualities of each of these, and the differences of these practices in descending from Langa Sutra. Buddha Shakyamuni says there are parts of the celestials, the Brahmas, parts of Brahmas, and it speaks of different kinds of paths because of different mental disposition of different beings or mental delusions. Accordingly, Buddha taught different kinds of paths. So the path of humans and celestials, the path of Brahma, then path of Hira, path of Pratikbuddha or solitary realizers, and the Buddha's Mahayana path, and which consists of two, the Sutrayana or Paramitya path and that of Tantric path. To speak of the Buddhist path, all of the major religious traditions speak of, with respect to this life, how one should refrain from harming others, where we should practice this, practice contentment and loving kindness. They all speak in the context of this life, where we acquire happiness mainly for humans, and that too. We speak of, in Buddhism, we speak of three kinds of sufferings. In the practice or the parts of this humans and celestials, they have developed renunciation with regards to this suffering of pain, and based on that renunciation, the practice of refraining from negativities in order to avoid suffering of pain is taught. So with those with new quality of concentrative power, where there is no practice of vipassana and samadhi, all these practitioners emphasize on bringing quality to this life, making yourself a good person in this life, and they all promises you a pure land by practicing strict obedience of the ethics or ethical disciplines and so forth. So then the part of Brahmas speaks of their the concentrated qualities of concentration and formless realms. So by the practice of mundane superior insight, one can also attain birth in the concentrative realm. And in this context, they seem to have developed renunciation with regards to the suffering of change. and most of them seem to accept the concept of creation. Jainism doesn't believe in creator, and Buddhism doesn't believe in creation. Other than that, rest of them believe in creation. In the path of Brahma, they accept rebirth and they accept karma, but ultimately they say that everything is actually created by karma ultimately. So majority of the religious practice or traditions fall in line with the path of Brahmas. Then recognizing the root of delusions as recognizing ignorance as the root of all delusions, and so long as you're under the influence of a delusion, a strong dislike towards ignorance and an aspiration to eliminate ignorance completely, with that aspiration, should you practice, then it becomes a fruitful practice, and that kind of attainment of the cessation of delusions. In this context, we speak of two kinds of liberation: the liberation in the context of the Hinayan path and liberation in the context of the Mahayana path. So, and because of the difference in accumulations, we speak of the different kinds of path, like the paths of Hinayan path and the Mahayana path. And with the knowledge obscuration or obscuration to omniscience as the one to be eliminated completely, if you have such an aspiration to get completely enlightened, in order to do that, because you are aspiring to fulfill the wishes of all sentient beings, it seems as if knowledge obscuration is obscuring you from reaching out to millions of sentient beings. And with this inspiration, where your more emphasis is on eliminating the stains of the delusions or the knowledge obscurations. So that is what we call as the Mahayana path. From another dimension, you can also say, like, well, I want to share here. Once we had a gathering of religious leaders from different parts, and there was one division of Islamism called Sufi, and they speak of the practice of compassion quite extensively. So one of the professors of Sufi tradition spoke to me, spoke in the public in this manner. So perhaps you might have heard it a lot, but I want to repeat again. There is no repetition, although there is no fault in repeating. So basically, he says all of the major religious traditions try to answer three questions. What are the three questions? We always speak of I, and we have an innate feeling of I. What is I? We say, I want happiness, I don't want suffering. So what is that I? So that's one question. Second question is there any beginning to that I? Is there any end to that I? That's the third question. So, three questions. What is I? Is there any beginning or any end? Those three questions. In order to give answers, we have different answers from these different religious traditions. So if you try to answer what is I, except Buddhism, majority of the religious traditions speak of a self which rules your body, which is like the owner of the body. We tend to think, my body, my mind. The fact that we speak of this, actually it's true. It's true word. It's true claim. But as we speak of my body, my mind, even though the continuation of mind existed from the time of our birth, still, if you speak of my body, we never feel as if this body existed from the time of our conception. But when we speak of I, we tend to think that I will be there at the time of death, I was there at the time of birth. And also in the context of the mind, when you relate to your mind through experiences and through studies, you have matured a lot and you have developed more understandings. So this is something we all know. But still, when it comes to thought of our I, which rules both speech and mind, we tend to have a distinct identity of self. I at the time of birth, I at the time of death. Especially those who believe in rebirth, they think of an I which comes from past to this and which goes from this to the next life. The physical body has not come from past to this and will not go to next. So one which comes from past and goes to the next, they feel that there must be a self, and self comes from past and we go to the next. And if we are to try to point out or an I from our physical body, then it's difficult. It's not uneasy. It's not easy. So they thought it's better to have an I identity of a self as distinct from the physical body. So then the concept of a soul, or in Hindi, the Atma, has come. In Buddhism, we say that kind of self, it has different aspects to it, criteria to it. That I, according to the non-Buddhist philosophers, it's partless. It doesn't have any part. Even though there's a lot of changes within the physical body or mind, that I doesn't change. It's almost permanent. It's permanent. So it's unitary, first criteria. Second is, it's permanent. And then substantially independent. So they tend to have a distinct identity, substantially existent. So they tend to think of a unitary, a permanent, and independent kind of self. So in Buddhism, we say, Buddha Shakyamuni himself, as we have discussed earlier, said the thought of a self is the thought of demons. So because of that arises the views, and the physical body is empty of that self, and so forth. As I seem to exist as autonomous to our body, we give credit to our own appearance or perception, and then say that there is a self as distinct from the body or the mind. And then philosophically we impute the possibility of such an I. So in order to, instead of removing the innately arising self-grasping, this philosophy seems to strengthen our own self-grasping. The stronger one's grasping towards oneself is one's own attitude towards whatever is mine becomes stronger, and then my possession, my friends, my body, with regards to all of them, our intensity of grasping arises the more we cling at an I. And based on that, we have again grasping at my enemy. And based on that, we are attached towards oneself and whatever is in the domain of oneself, and which hatred towards the others. So based on that, Dharmakirti says that based on these two divisions, all the anger and attachment arises, and through them distorted actions arises. The more one's clinking of an I is in them, people tend to get so irritated if the intensity of the grasping of self and is quite strong in them. Whereas for those who have no strong grasping, or if it's not intense, then they don't feel that irritated, even if you try to play with them. Look at the dogs. Those who are impassioned and who are egoistic, even among the dogs, they don't have company. And the moment that dog comes, all the other dogs run away. So that's the reason why Buddha says that thought of I is a demonic thought, or the thought of the demon, or mind of demons. The aggregates are empty of this. There is no self in it. So the physical body or the psychophysical aggregates are empty of that self. There isn't any distinct honor within the body or the mind. So body and mind are, or the elements, parts are empty of such an honor. Because of that, the kind of I that we so cling to as substantially, independently, eternally existent, that is not there. But that doesn't mean that I doesn't exist. There is an I. Because of that, we say, I have this feeling, and whether or not something is good or not, also depends on one's own feeling. So because of that feeling of dissatisfaction and feeling of happiness, based on that we say this is good, that is bad, right? So without correlating them with one's feeling, you cannot claim something to be bad or good. Since we don't wish for suffering and we only wish for happiness, because of that we make a distinction between bad or good based on our own feelings, based on our feelings of happiness and suffering. If such an I doesn't exist, we cannot make a distinction between my, mine, and their. You can also speak of Buddha or sentient beings. So therefore, to claim that there is no I at all will be really foolish. Some people, without real understanding of Buddha Dharma, thinking, even without proper knowledge, seem to be confronted with this idea that there is no self at all. But this is not the case. Even though it says there is no self in chanting texts, just as we label a carriage based on its parts, in the same way, based on the different psychophysical elements, we define or designate or impute a self. So this kind of narration is also, this kind of statement is also in the Sutra. It's derived from that. Just as we try to label a carriage, a horse carriage, based on the different parts, in the same way, and through that designation, because of the assembly of the different parts, we can have a carriage. If you try to find a carriage within its different parts, like the wheels, all the nails, all the different structures, if individually, if they are all a carriage, all of them are not. These are just mere parts. But assembly of these parts give rise to an imputation, and then it functions. In the same manner, based on different psychophysical elements or aggregates, in the same manner. So this is, the first one is a metaphor and the second one is the real meaning. In the same way, based on the 5 aggregates, like form, feeling, discernment, compositional factor, and consciousness, based on these 5 elements, we impute or describe a self. Apart from that, there isn't any independent, distinct, autonomous self without depending on these aggregates. So based on these aggregates, we can only impute an I, and based on these, I can only exist. So there isn't any self-substantially autonomous self apart from the body and the mind. Then as we go deeper, as we go higher within the body, if you try to find a tangible or pointable, concrete self, even though we do have this kind of understanding, then when it comes to further analysis, people tend to feel that there must be a self pointable, and because of that, they believe that consciousness, within consciousness, we should be able to find a self. Even Buddhism itself, when it comes to the view of selflessness, or we have different kinds of selflessness, or different subtleties of selflessness. Apart from Buddhism, rest of the philosophical traditions believe in eternal, unitary, independent self. So the answers are two. One answered by the Buddhism and one answered by the non-Buddhists. The second question is what it is an end to the self. Oh, sorry, a beginning to the self. Those who believe in creation, for them, they say that there is a beginning because, for example, take the example of Christianity. This life itself is planned and created by God. This itself has a lot of benefits. It will really enhance your own devotion and make you and enhance your submission to the God and make you closer to the God. And this will really make this life worthwhile, since this is actually God's creation. So I know a good Christian practitioner, and I know him, and I asked him, what is wrong if you believe in rebirth? And he said, this is not possible, because this life is the only creation of, the only life created for us by the God. And so therefore you have an attitude of closeness, like looking at him as like a father who created you. And accordingly, it makes a lot of sense in order to act according to the aspirations or teachings of Father. So those who believe in the creation, for them, since this life itself is being it was created by a creator, for them there is a beginning. But then there are some who believes in creation, but still believes in a unitary, eternal, independent self, but still believes on one side in the karma and rebirth. For them, ultimately, they believe that the great Brahma has created or planned this world or the universe. For them, ultimately, there is a beginning, end to the beginning. So with regards to Jainism, I'm not sure why don't they believe in creator, and that's not clear in our text, and I was not able to get some satisfactory clarification from my Jain friends. So from their perspective, I'm not really sure. But in Buddhism, that's all it says. Keep on tea offering. Take your teas. That's what his Solin said. If it's convenient, it's good to give cold water to people. Otherwise, it's quite hot, and on top we have this sunny water. I think, and on top of this, if you drink a hot tea, what will happen? Instead, isn't it better to have cold water? What do you feel? So this answers the question of whether there is a beginning. So in Buddhism, whether there is an end to a self in the beginning, first we have to think the foundation on which we label a self. So that means the 5 aggregates or the 5 psychophysical elements that constitute a self. And then since physical body is born in this very life, we have to think of the mind which has continued from past lives. So we have to see if there is a beginning to the continuity of mind. Whatever is in the nature of birth, among these, if you look, there are 2 distinctions. One which is animated or which is sentient, and one which is not. One which is not sentient. So in both of them, they all are born from their own causes and conditions. So whether be it internal sentient beings or external non-sentient objects, all of them are born from causes and conditions. As for the causes and conditions, there are 2 kinds, substantial and cooperative. One which actually becomes the real cause, which evolves itself into the result. And it's another new form, version to help the creation of that new form. That's what we call as conducive factors or cooperative factors. Look at the pillars here and the woods. All these, if you look at them, they are actually cut from a tree, and that tree was again born from its own, like you can call it mother or something like that, but substantially it has caused it. So it has continued from that. That's what we call a substantial cause. And then crafting or cutting the trees and then modification of the trees, all these are like corporate factors in order to give rise to this pillar. In the same way, if you look at the external non-sentient objects, all of them are born from their own concordant causes and conditions. So this is a law of nature. This is not made by karma. This is just nature. Whether it be external and habitat, if you look at them, the elements, if you look at the derivatives of the element, like the like objects we see, they are all born from their own elements, like fire, earth, and so forth. And these are all further born from their own causes and condition. So so how this came to be connected with our karma is something we really need to consider. Otherwise, on the substantial level, they are born from their own causes and conditions. So mind being luminous and has the nature of luminosity, how can a non-luminous form give rise to this luminous body? I'm not hearing the Tibetan. Are you hearing the translation? Sorry, now it has come back again. So, external object. So if you look at how things are born, they are not born from physical forms which are not luminous. So therefore, Nimdu. लाइट चला गया क्या हुआ अंदर का लाइट चला गया सब ट्रांसलेशन नहीं आ रहा नहीं आ रहा नहीं आ रहा है ट्रांसलेशन नहीं आ रहा है सब नहीं आ रहा है आपका नहीं है था धीरे संगत संजा क्या दे रही हूँ कायर ते ताश है देता यूं दो भैया क्या हुआ सब चला गया पावर कहाँ से पहले से होना चाहिए ना यार क्या आप लोग कंपनी है कौन सा कंपनी है फक So would you start a good life or not? So I'm not able to hear His Holiness. So if you're not getting the translation, it's because I'm not hearing His Holiness. Sorry for this. It's a technical problem. We translators can't do anything about this. Are you hearing? Are you getting? Are you getting transmission? No. Are you getting? Are you getting? No. Hello. Are you getting? Are you getting? Mic testing 1 2 3. No. This is power is cut. Log 系统。这还显示什么？现在大家用那么多。算了。对，别的。log 车上写写，但你是什么学呢？log 车上写写。不对。你也去。你是学的，他就是的。是吧？那可学说了。老但孙女的老车上写松，他等他一直当车没有嘛，给这个，但你是学的。马龙俺都见不到，俺都中没。孙女车上空就是你是学生对，听不懂这。那，其实，你们多？他这老大建设多呢，哪点当过了？当然还就是，这样嘛做了，当不忽然的嘞。你好嘛的，送去什么这样嘛的，老这样我嘛的。English translation section, mic test 1 to 3. 93.1. 93. 차상 미도스, 차상. 기 차상 미도스. 93.1. 기주 차상 미도스. 쉬래. 야게 좀 말해. 좁게. Mic test 1 to 3. 1 to 3. 1 to 3. 띵면 봐. Mic testing 1 2 3. Mic testing 1 2 3. Because we have so many people gathered, there is a danger of people being killed in rushes. So therefore, we thought it's better not to go to the main temple, but do the our common aspiration for here, with here. So what is your opinion? Are you going to do it here? Seems people want to agree. As people agree. So there is no rush from your part, from our part. We'll just conduct the common prayer together here for the well-being of Tibetan cause. So his Holiness is asking again, what is the condition of the mics or the transmitters? Still no. So we have some 18 translators here, and then transmissions are being supplied by a company here, but we are not getting any good transmission right now. And now current or the current has broken off. The electricity is not there for the translators. So because of that, there's a break in the teaching. His Holiness still asking, no. Somebody go to the other side and give me the message if it's all fine. That's what His Holiness is saying. When the light comes, please inform us. No. That comes bit go shoes do kain lo maraji do. Di kesai dine ji shes. Kesai di kab dole chena do. No lamnen chon ningo mare. Shu labro comes. Lane, sir.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Yeah, forget this one. This one.
Someone's asking whether it's okay. Some of them do.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
But we don't have here. Hello. Mic testing 1 2 3. Mic testing 1 2 3. Mic testing. Hello. Okay, now it's back. Like the Jainism in India started around the same time as that of Buddhism in India. And then also there are homegrown religious traditions in India, like Zoroastrianism from ancient Persia also came here to India. And then the Jew religion, and then Islamism and Christianity. So all the major religious traditions with philosophical backgrounds have found ground in India. So in this country, for thousands of years, all these major religious traditions thrive harmoniously. Of course, there is one's own respect in devotion to one's own religious tradition, but becoming impartial and becoming discriminative is another. Yeah.
So, of course, different religious traditions have different philosophical ideas, and because of that, lots of debates go on between the different philosophical traditions. But in Buddhism, we use this the philosophical critical analysis in order to know the reality. And therefore, we need to use the facility that we have, that is given, that is found in the tradition itself, to make a critical analysis of the teachings. If you don't use that, then it's no use. And then, of course, there are different ideas and debates between the different scholars in Nalanda and in Tibet also. There has been this tradition, and where there has been this kind of the various different religious traditions which have philosophical ideas living together in one country, that in turn also gives the people opportunity to live in harmony. And so all the religious traditions which have the same kind of practices, and then practically there are all these different religious traditions in the world, and therefore it is very important to live in harmony. So I make this effort to for religious harmony. And when at times when there is terrorism from some section of the Muslim community, then the people tend to generalize that all Muslims are bad, but that should not be done. And so few people who may be claiming to be practitioners of their religion, mischievous people, and by using that as a reason, if you cover the whole religion with the bad name, criticizing it, saying that it's not generalizing that all Muslims are rather mischievous, it's not good. I say that. I mean, mischievous peoples are always there in the different traditions within the Hindu, Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims, and so forth. And so this is something understandable. And so by it's not logical to try to draw the generalized idea that all the whole religion is bad. And so. Just like in the case of the Buddhists, we cannot say the few Buddhists represent the whole of Buddhism. The mischievous people cannot represent these different religions, and so this is very important to keep in mind, the religious harmony in the world. And so despite all the different philosophical differences, the purpose of all these religions is to make to produce good people. For some, the Creator God is a very good reason to follow the will of the Creator God. Is a very good reason to adopt their good principles. And whereas others say that because of one's own action, if you do some action which is bad, then it's going to you are going to suffer the consequences, and that kind of teaching are more appropriate and suitable. And therefore, the practice of compassion, love, tolerance, and so forth, based on the idea of the different ideas according to the theistic religion and non-theistic religions, which talk about the causality, are very appropriate for different people. The Buddha himself sometimes has said that there is an indication that there is an independent I, a person, where he says that the five aggregates are the burdens, and the one who takes this burden is the person, and so that indicates that. And so, in accordance with the dispositions of the disciples, the followers, the Buddha Shakyamuni had given different teachings according to the needs. There is a reason to do that, because the different people need different teachings. Today we have almost 7 billion people who have various predispositions, mental dispositions, and therefore the varieties of religions and traditions are very suitable, very good. And therefore it is important for everybody to create religious harmony in the world. So, of course, philosophically there are differences in the different religions, but then the main purpose, the message is that of love and compassion. The Indian former Prime Minister Advani has once told me that in India, the different philosophical thoughts, followers of these various philosophical thoughts have criticized each other, debated with each other, but they respect the others. His example is the Charvaka school of thought, which was criticized by the other schools of thought in India, like Sankhya and so forth, and because all of which considered this particular tradition as being nihilistic. But then the follower of those practitioners of that particular religious thought is called Rishi. In English, the term may be translated as sage. And so this is a basis for India's successful democracy, he had said. So although the different religious philosophical traditions criticized each other, were debated with each other, still they respected each other. And so this is very good, isn't it? And so I usually say that the Charvakas, who are regarded as nihilists, so this tradition of respecting other religious traditions had been there in the past in India, in ancient India. And so today we have lots of non-believers, and we need to believe, we need to respect them, because we are all same. All of us are same in that we want happiness and not suffering. And so we cannot just disregard them by saying that, oh, this person has a nihilistic, hedonistic idea, and they don't believe in any religion and so forth. And so Indian constitution itself, it follows secularism. Secularism here is not to mention that we are against religion, but we respect all the religions as well as non-believers. And so this is a general idea of how we could go about with the religious harmony. So with Buddhism, after Buddha became enlightened, he first turned the first wheel of Dharma in Varanasi, which is on the Four Noble Truths, which was taught rather popularly. And then later on, the teachings were compiled. And so these are something which are historically recorded. And then in Gridakutta, the vulture peak, according to how the terms are used in the Sandinimochana Sutra, the sutra revealing the thought of the Buddha, the second turning of the wheel happened in this Gridakutta, in the Vulture Mountain, where the Buddha gave the teaching on the perfection of wisdom sutras. So it seems that these teachings on the perfection of wisdom were not given popularly. For example, if you look at the Heart Sutra, we find the discussion between the Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. But Avalokiteshvara may not have been a human being, but he was a god in the form of a god. And so the Shariputra, who was in the audience of the Buddha, may have seen Avalokiteshvara in the deity form, and therefore he asked the question. And then we find in the Mahayana Sutras that we mention of many different gods and goddesses, and then also human beings. For example, we have the 8 great bodhisattvas, the close disciples of the bodhisattvas, the close disciples of the Buddha. There were 8, and so these teachings were not given in the popularly amongst public. If you visit the Vulture Mountain, Vulture Peak, you can see how small the area is, how small that hill is. But then it seems that the place, when it says there are so many different listeners, audience during the Buddha's time on that hill, may have been from the perspective of a pure vision. And so there has been this argument that Mahayana is not the teaching of the Buddha, and especially the Tantra. And so people have this question. In Maitreya's Sutra Alamkara, there is one chapter on arguing Mahayana, for the Mahayana being the teaching of the Buddha, and also Nagarjuna has done that, and also Bhavaviveka has written in his Madhyamaka Madhyamaka Hridaya. It's very great detailed explanation of how Mahayana is Buddhism, and so and other masters also have done that. So the reason why there has been there are so many debates about Mahayana not being teaching of the Buddha is because it was taught not popularly. But then it's quite problematic if we have to also decide that the teaching of the Mahayana teachings are not the Buddha's teaching, but it was the teachings were created or written by other masters of India in the past. And so if you look at the Pajaparamita Sutras, it explains in great detail on certain topics which are taught in for example, in the Four Noble Truths and so forth. So if you look at the Vinaya teachings and the Pali teachings, if there is not much reasoning that is used to prove things, but you rather resort to scriptural authority. But if you look at the Pramana system, then the Four Noble Truths are actually proved as being truth through reasoning, rather than resorting to any scriptural authority. And so in the Pali tradition, where it is taught, things are all selfless. And also that nirvana is peace. And in other words, the 4 seals of the Dharma, which are taught in the Pali tradition as well. And these are made very alive and in the Mahayana scriptures. So if you have to say these teachings are Mahayana teachings are not Buddha's teachings, then it would be very difficult to stand the position. And so there cannot be 2 different Buddhas who could be teachers of one Buddhist tradition. And so we have to except that the Shakyamuni Buddha was the one who taught this. So the teachings of the Buddha. So in the first the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, and then the third Noble Truth is explained in greater detail in the Pajaparamita Sutras. And within the Pajaparamita Sutra explanations, there are those of the explanations according to the according to Chittamatra, and then also according to Maitreya's Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, which in turn explains the Buddha nature, the clear light nature of the mind, which is a subjective mind, more in greater detail. And so this, according to the Gongdang Rinpoche, is to lead the disciples progressively into Tantra as well. And so in Tantra, the use of very more subtle level of the mind is used. And therefore, we have the 4 different Tantra sets, which differ in their profundity of the explanation or presentation of the subjective clear light mind. And so the first 4 Noble Truths teachings on the 4 Noble Truths are the foundation of the teaching of the Buddha, and so you lay the foundation like laying a foundation of a house, and then next comes the teaching on the Prajaparamita Sutras, which teach the emptiness, which is the object, the clear light, which is the object. And then next comes those teachings on the Tathagata Garbha, which relates the subjective mind of clear light. And then you go into the clear light mind in a subtler level in the Tantra. And so these Tantric teachings were not given in public as well. They have developed or come according to the development of spiritual development of the practitioners who have pure vision. So in their pure visions, then they can see all these different deities. And so, for example, in the case of in the case of certain lower tantras, there is the Buddha himself arising in the form of the main deity, in the form of while being a monk, and then there is also others which, in the case of Vajradhatu mandala, the Buddha arises in the form of a deity, and many other deities in the retinue, and so forth. And so these are the teachings which are practiced rather secretly, and as it was known in India, and so Tantra has to be practiced rather secretly and hidden in a hidden manner. And in Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, there is mention of actually practicing the secret, the holy secret. So that secrecy here refers to the exchanging self with others, and also the practice of giving and taking, which are very difficult for any ordinary person to actually adopt. So secrecy here doesn't have anything to do with being hypocritic, but unless some of the practitioners have reached that stage where they can do those practices which are taught in the Tantra, I mean, they're not matured enough for that. Until they're matured enough, they cannot receive such teachings. And therefore, these Tantric teachings have come to the different disciples in their pure visions. And so, therefore, we cannot say that the Tantric teaching cannot come after the teaching of after the Buddha has popularly, according to popular account, after the Buddha has died, because it can happen even after the Buddha's death. And I know my some of my acquaintances, friends, who have pure visions. So even today, we can have Buddhas coming in the form of Nirmanakaya, Supreme Nirmanakaya. And so, according to the development of the spiritual development of the disciples, they can have pure visions. And so Buddhas can be anywhere where there is faith and belief and devotion in people. And so we cannot say the Buddha cannot appear today, but he already lived in 2,600 years ago. So we need to do critical analysis of the teachings and then apply the teaching in oneself, so that you gain the experiences. In the Sakya tradition, you have the Lungsema, the scriptural validity, the valid master, and the valid teaching. And then there is a valid experience. So, from the point of view of developing this within oneself, we have to first have the experience, the valid experience. By knowing what kind of experience, development progress you have made, you can tell and what changes have gone into you, in you. And then you will be able to see from your own experience that what the teachings that you have received from the master has actually worked for you. Therefore, the master is an authentic one. And therefore, you find the master to be a valid master or authentic master. And then, because the Lama has given the teaching or gained the experiences by relying on these scriptures, such as the exegetical text written by Nagarjuna and so forth. Therefore, the texts also can be considered as valid or authentic, authoritative, and in turn, these texts written by the great masters have their source in the teaching of the Buddha himself, and therefore we can also consider the teaching of the Buddhas, the teaching of the Buddha as authentic. And so when Nagarjuna explains Panchaparamita Sutras, and he has really made very detailed explanations. So when some Western scholars say that these Panchaparamita Sutra and so forth were not taught by the Buddha, I usually argue against them. Recently I met some scholar who said that the Sutra Samuchaya was not written by Master Nagarjuna. But because he said many of the sutras that were quoted in this text were not there during the time of the Buddha. But then I said Abhayakara's explanation of this Sutra Samuchaya by Nagarjuna, in that, the Abhaya says, Abhaya, of course, was following Chittamatra. He was a really admirer of Chittamatra. And he says that Asangas and Nagarjuna have the same thought. They come to the same point. So, which I saw in Abhayakara's writing. So Abhayakara's explanation of Sutra Samuchaya actually accepted that the Sutra Samuchaya was actually written by Nagarjuna. And so those who say today that these different sutras were not actually taught by the Buddha but written by other Indian masters, I say that compared to these modern scholars, the Master Nagarjuna was more familiar with the Indian history. And so when Nagarjuna came, it was only about 400 years after the Buddha's death, and so he was closer to the Buddha's time, and he was Indian on the in the second hand, on the other hand, and so he would be more familiar with the Indian history. And Nagarjuna was not somebody who just kind of followed things rather blindly, and he was someone who really did critical analysis of the teaching of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha themselves. And so, such a person cannot say that something which was not taught by the Buddha actually is the teaching of the Buddha himself. So he knew medicine, he knew alchemy, chemistry, and and so he also wrote texts on. He was a scholar on the linguistic, and if you read his fundamental treatise of the Middle Way, the style of writing is said to be marvelous by modern scholars as well. And so similarly, with regard to the writings of Aryadeva and Dharma Kirti, their writings are marvelous. And so they were really great linguists as well. So with regard to epistemology and logic, we can, it's a topic which is general. But epistemology in general is something common to Buddhists and non-Buddhists, but when we talk about, when we refer to Pramana Vartika by Dharma Kirti, then that becomes a epistemology, text on epistemology of Buddhism. And therefore, Nagarjuna accepted what is not against reason, whereas what can be proved through reason. And whereas when something that was taught by the Buddha is found to be rather illogical, when he checked through reasoning, then he rejected to accept them literally. And so such a person, this kind of caliber, I would rather choose believe more in the Nagarjuna than the modern scholars. And so he accepted the Mahayana to be the teaching of the Buddha. And then with regard to Tantra, so you may, of course, many of you have heard this story, but some of you may not heard it. Nagarjuna has written the text on the generation stage of Goya Samaja, and Aryadeva has written the Charya Melapaka, or which is a commentary on Master Nagarjuna's text. And also he has written a text which is called Purifying the Mind, written by Aryadeva. It is found in the Tanjore collection of the Tibetan canonical texts. Once a Sanskrit scholar by the name of Upadhyaya, who was a great scholar of Sanskrit in Varanasi, who became later on a Buddhist, he became attracted to Buddhism and then later became Buddhist. So he was doing, at one time, he was doing research on Kalachakra, Tantra, and in his research, while he was doing his research, he went to Nepal, and at that time, while he was doing the research, he found a Sanskrit text which was written on a palm leaf, written in Sanskrit. He found a single folio. So when he read this, what was written on the palm leaf, the content is about the highest yoga tantra, which talks about using the sensual pleasure into path. So the style of writing, he said, was the same as the style of writing in the 400 verses of Madhyamaka. And so he was able to, he said he was able to confirm that this was he was able to confirm from that Aryadeva actually practiced Tantra. The great scholar Aryadeva practiced Tantra. And then in Chandrakirti, Chandrakirti has written the Bright Lamp, which is a commentary on the 5 stages on the Goya Samaja. And the scholars also say that this style of writing in this text and the style of writing in the Prasanapada are also same. And so there were great masters in India who actually practiced Tantra. And then Chandarakshita, who was a master of Kamalashila, of whose text the stages of meditation we are going to go through. And so Kamalashila also accepts that there is a Buddhist Tantra. And then later on, when Adisha came to Tibet, he wrote the Bodhipath Paradhipa, the lamp for the path to enlightenment. In there also we find mention of that there being Tantra in Buddhism. But later on, people misused Tantra. They improperly, used Tantra improperly by using women and alcohol and so forth. But this is something that should be blamed to the individuals themselves rather than the teaching, the tradition itself. because there are such people who misuse them, we cannot say that Tantra is not good. So unless you have reached a point where you can use the Tantra in the skillful means, realization of skillful means, then by using the Tantra improperly, you will fall into hell. And so there is one Professor Joshi, who was a Patiala University professor. He is no more, of course, now, but he's written a text. He gave me a copy of that text. In this book, he says one reason why Buddhism declined in India was because of misuse of Tantra. And the second reason is because the monks became very wealthy, and the monks took interest in making wealth. And that also in turn caused the decline of Buddhism in India. So, as I said earlier, we have the first teaching of the turning of the wheel as the fundamental, the foundation of the teaching, and then the Pajaparamita Sutras next, where it teaches that of the emptiness very thoroughly. And also from that we can understand how to overcome the delusions, the afflictive, the destructive emotions, and also it explains in great detail that of those of the Four Noble Truths. And then there are teachings which were given by the Buddha, teaching about the three natures. By having three characteristics in mind, the Buddha taught the three natures. And so that was for those who cannot take these teachings of the Pajaparamita Sutras literally, the Buddha skillfully taught these. And then next comes the teachings on the clear light, the subjective mind of clear light, which is, as I earlier referred, in the Mahayana Uttara Tantra of Maitreya. And then in the 7th century, the Buddhism started coming to India, from India to Tibet. So during the time of the King Songtsen Gampo, who became interested in Buddhism, and then later on, mainly this the spread of Buddhism or dissemination of Buddhism in Tibet was the responsibility, or the work was carried out by King Chesung Detsen in the 8th and 9th centuries, who was helped by Shantarakshita, and then also the powerful master Lobin Rinpoche or Guru Rinpoche, Guru Padmasambhava, and so the abbot Shantarakshita. So we call these three the emperor. We have the trio of the abbot, the master Guru Padmasambhava, and the emperor, the king. So with thanks to them, the Buddhism was established and has been established very firmly on the soil of Tibet. And then the abbot Shantarakshita mainly took the responsibility of teaching the Tibetans at that time, and he also gave the monastic ordination. And then Master Padmasambhava took the responsibility of overcoming the obstacles and of establishing Buddhism firmly on the Tibetan soil, and also he gave very sacred teachings to a few select disciples, like the 25 disciples. And then after the Shantarakshita passed away, the Master Kamalashila was invited to Tibet, as it was actually prophesied by Shantarakshita himself. So I will teach mainly Kamalashila's text. Kamalashila's text, although it's a very short text, but it shows the whole range of practice of how to go about with the path, and then also how to achieve the goal, the final result. And there are three books of these stages of meditation. In the first book, it says the Trisong Detsen, the king, requested this teaching, and therefore this, at the request of the King Trisong Detsen, Kamalashila wrote this text. This is what is mentioned in the first book of the stages of meditation. And so it was. It seems it's quite clear that it was written for the Tibetans, for the Dharma to spread in Tibet. And I received the teaching on this text of Kamalashila from Sakya Abbot Sangye Tenzin. It was here in Bodh Gaya, where I met the abbot. When he was at that time, in those times, teaching at the Tibetan University in Sarnath. And so when we were talking, he said, he told me that he received teachings on this, on Kamalashila's stages of meditation. And so the time when he received it was at Samye Monastery from one master who had come from Kham, the Kham region of Tibet. One abbot sat on a throne, which was said to have been the throne where Chandarakshita himself sat and gave teachings. So, although Khenpo Sangye Tenzin did not have any time to check who that abbot, Dzogchen Lama, Dzogchen master was, who gave this teaching on the 3 books of the stages of meditation, he told me that he received this teaching on the 3 books of the stages of meditation. As soon as I heard this from him, I felt that it was indispensable for me to receive the teaching on these 3 texts from him. So, from Patna University, Patna Museum, I think we got the text. I sent somebody to get the text, and I received teaching from him, from Khenpo Sangye Tenzin. So please raise your hands who have the books for the teaching, the preliminary teaching book. There is text in Chinese as well. These are the stages of meditation. Do the newcomers from Tibet have this book? I will read through the book and then give short explanations here and there. But having heard me, don't just leave the book away, throw the book away, saying that, oh, I have received this teaching now and I can just get rid of it. Don't think that. But perhaps you may not face any difficulty if you take it across the border into Tibet. So read it sometimes and then make some notes also of my comments and use those comments as the seed. And you should study this book over, and also you can add other books to study the text, and it would be very good to go through or read other texts. So in the preface, of course, there are some mentions of there are certain things that maybe could cause the Tibetans from Tibet some problem if they took it through across the border. So you can tear this page, his honor says. So look at page number 10 in English. The second volume of the Stages of Meditation by Arya Kamalashila is on page 9. On page 9, the title is given, and then on page 10. those of you who have the green book, which has both in Tibetan and English, look at page number 19. Of course, you have the table of content. In the Indian language, Bhavana Karama, and in the Tibetan language, Gomrim Parva, homage. So this translates as the second volume of the middle volume of the stages of meditation, or homage to the youthful Manjushri. So the title, stages of meditation here refers to the meditation in the context of study, reflection, and meditation. So the meditation refers to that. So which it refers to in turn refers to being familiarization. And so you have to put effort. By putting effort and familiarizing with something is called meditation. So a person puts effort and makes himself or herself familiar with the subject, and that is called meditation, or getting acquainted. So having thought over, gone over the text or gone over the subject, for example, compassion, which is this attitude where you can't bear the suffering of other sentient beings and wish them to out of suffering. So for here you have to know how sentient beings are suffering, and also you have to hold the sentient beings dear. And so by holding them dear and thinking about their suffering and wishing them suffering out of suffering, you will feel that this is something very precious. It's very good, and therefore you have reached that of the experience or the wisdom arising through contemplation or reflection. And so you have to think about the benefits and of these practices, and having thought over it or thought it over and over again, then you feel that this is really something which must be developed within yourself. And so having developed that conviction, then you familiarize your mind with this compassion. And having familiarized your mind with compassion over and over again, and when there comes a time when your whole body shakes and the hairs on your body kind of stands on end, and you shed called tears flow from your eyes. Those things, when they happen through effort, of course you have some experience, simulated experience sort of thing, which comes through effort. But then when you come to a point where you have the experience of the compassion without having to put much effort, it comes rather spontaneously, then that is the effortless compassion. So in the beginning you have some the rough idea of what compassion is through study. It may be very unstable, because you may find someone who explains it as something else, and you might follow that person, or another person comes and gives another explanation, you might again follow that person. So it's not very clear, you're not very stable. And so after having heard the teaching, then you do your critical analysis and read more texts, and then gain some conviction, certitude, or certainty in it. And then when you develop that true certitude or certainty in it, that may be considered as a valid cognition, the certitude based on valid cognition. And when that happens, even if somebody comes to challenge you, you will not be able to, the person will not be able to sway you from your conviction. You can actually explain to them, you can reason out to prove them, and even to scientists you can explain how this can help to live one's life, to have a very happy family, happy community, and have a society and so forth. And so this is what is known as the certainty gained through contemplation. And so that must be developed after developing the first stage. And then comes the meditation. and so through which we have to make change in our mind. So that is about meditation. And then the stages here, as I said earlier, regarding the Heart Sutra mantra, this Gade Gade mantra. Of course, within that context, you can actually take all the different path systems. I mean, of course, you cannot do them all at one time, simultaneously. And secondly, you have to build up the lower ones in order to progress to the higher ones. And so you have to know the correct path correctly. You have to know its identity, and then you have to follow the practice in a sequential manner rather than disorderly manner. And so you have to actually make progress rather sequentially. And then the number of practices also should be complete. And also the steps should be rather orderly. So here stages means that the path, the different paths are shown here in a step-by-step manner. And then the homage to Manjushri, first the Indian language. With regard to that, there are over 100 texts which were translated words of the Buddha, and then there are over 200 volumes of texts which were translated words of the Indian commentarial treatises. And so most of these texts were translated from directly from India, from Indian language. But there is a commentary by the master Vencek, who has written the commentary on the sutra revealing the thought of the Buddha clearly. And so maybe there are something like 10 different sutras which were translated from Chinese, but the rest are all translated from India. Of course, even these texts which were translated from Chinese actually came from India as well, because they were translated from Indian language to Chinese. And so the Tibetan tradition usually says that by giving the title in Sanskrit, it shows the authenticity of the source of the teaching, which is India. And then homage to the youthful Manjushri was actually homage written by the translator. So this was done in accordance with the decree of the Tibetan kings, in order to show which of the three Pitakas the different texts belonged to. And so Abhidharma, for Abhidharma you have Manjushri as the deity of homage. And for the sutra, you have the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as the objects of homage. And then for Vinaya, you have the omniscient one as the homage, object of homage. And so, because it deals with the very subtle levels of the causality and so forth, and therefore, in order to know which of the three Pitakas these different texts belong to, you have these different ways of paying homage to the different deities and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so forth. So reading through the text on page 10, I shall briefly explain the stages of meditation for those who follow the system of Mahayana Sutras. The intelligent who wish to actualize omniscience extremely quickly should make deliberate effort to fulfill its causes and conditions. It is possible for omniscience to be produced without, not possible for omniscience to be produced without causes, because if it were, everything could always be omniscient. If things were produced without reliance on something else, they could exist without constraint. There would be no reason why everything could not be omniscient. So what this shows is the omniscient state should be attained in reliance on causes and conditions, which means that omniscience state cannot come about naturally, is not like a creator God. So the omniscient state is itself something which has come through causes and conditions, and therefore you have to have the complete causes and conditions to reach that. In order to make change in our mind, leave alone the omniscience, but in order to just become a professor, a great scholar, I mean, somebody cannot become a scholar or a professor just at birth, and if you and also not by just sleeping. In order to become a professor of a university, you have to study for many years and become a scholar. And similarly, in order to reach a state where you know everything, the varieties as well as the suchness at the same time, simultaneously, you have to have created the causes and conditions. And so anything that is produced has to come through causes and conditions, and particularly that of omniscience. So philosophically, the unique thing about Buddhism is dependent origination. So dependent origination, all the Buddhist philosophical thoughts accept that, teach that. In the Bhashikas, they also talk about the 12 links of dependent origination. And also we find in the Vinaya tradition, outside at the entrance of the monasteries, you have the 5 part as 12 links of dependent origination, 5-part dependent origination, Bhavana Krama, Kalachakra. So when I visited once Thailand, there was a monastery where you can actually see dead bodies, just that body which is just dead, and then a dead body which has already been few days, and then few weeks, and so forth. So there are pictures of these, and so these help in meditating on the ugly nature of our existential body. And so the Buddha himself taught the 5-part Bhavana Chakra, the wheel of life. So which was written, drawn according to the actually direction of the Buddha himself. In the center of it is, in the center of the wheel of life, in the second circle, there is the higher realms of existence, and then where there is not intense sort of suffering, but then there is sections which represent the realms where you have extreme suffering. So I'm not sure about whether sometimes out of the 6 realms of existence, either the called anti-gods are included within the gods or not. And so something which is produced, it has to either come through without causes. If that is the case, then it has to happen always. Whereas if it comes about through inappropriate causes and conditions, unsuitable causes and conditions, so for example, if even the animals know that things come from its own causes and conditions, suitable causes and conditions, the animals go to shades when they feel lots of heat. And when they need heat, in the winter they go into warm places, and so things which come about, things which are produced, do come from their own appropriate causes and conditions. And then inside the 6 realms, you have another circle which is divided into 2 parts. One is white in color with humans and gods going upwards, and then there's another part which is colored black, and you find depiction of you find paintings of beings going actually head down, and so which are brought about through positive and negative karmas. And so through negative karmas, then we have suffering, painful suffering. Of course, we do not want suffering. We do not actually look for suffering, but so there is nobody who actually intentionally want to create suffering for themselves. But for us, maybe it's a different case. We know that certain things cause us suffering, but still we indulge in them. And then this happiness is said to be the result of valid cognition. And then within the results, there are results which are directly brought about by this valid cognition, and then there are indirect results which are brought about indirectly by them. And so what this shows is that the happiness has to come through its own right causes and conditions. So what we want is happiness, and so we need to create the cause which is right and which is supported by valid cognition as well. And suffering comes from ignorance, which is a misconception, a distorted view. Within ignorance about of course there are two different things. One is mere ignorance, mere not knowing something, and then the other is misconception, misknowledge. And because of this, we cause suffering, and therefore the karma, the negative karma, is created by because of our misknowledge or ignorance. And so in the center of the Bhavana chakra, you find the 3 animals, the pig, then a cock, and then a snake. And so these 3 represent or symbolize the ignorance, attachment, and hatred. In some paintings, you find these 3 actually holding the pig holding the cock's tail, and the hand holding the snake's tail. But then in other paintings, you'll find the pig in the pig's mouth. There is both the cock hand and the snakes. I mean. And so how do we create karma through delusion, through these 3 poisons is represented or depicted in the outer circle of the 12 links. First one is an old blind woman, and then the second link is represented by a potter making pots. So which is like actually creating the causes, the positive and negative karmas which give rise to happiness or suffering. And so that is the formative karma represented by poetry. And then the third is consciousness, which is represented by a monkey. So in this way you have the 12 different links in this in the outer circle. So through these 12 links, what is represented is how we come into being in this cycle of existence through our karma, which is in turn created through our 3 poisons, which get back to the of ignorance as well. And so the person, the Buddha taught So the Buddha taught selflessness. And so the Buddha taught how we circle in this samsara, we call the wheel turned by, that of ignorance, which gives rise to the karma, and in turn which leaves the imprint on the consciousness and so forth. So, therefore, since all functional things arise only occasionally, they depend strictly on cause, their causes. Omniscience too is rare because it does not occur at all times and in all places, and everything cannot become omniscient. Therefore, it definitely depends on causes and conditions. Page 10 or page 19. So when the Buddha taught the characteristics of suffering, the noble truth of suffering, he gives these 4 attributes. Impermanence and so forth. And then the origin of suffering, there are also 4 characteristics like the origin and so forth. So within the origin there is the cause, and then the origin, and then the condition, and then that which thoroughly gives rise to something. And so, and then when it comes with regard to cessation, what that refers to is the overcoming of the certain factors through by applying certain antidotes. And so the antidote has to be developed within yourself, and therefore you have the cessation and the path. And so by applying the antidote, then you will reach the cessation, which is characterized by which also has these 4 characteristics, which are called cessation, and then excellence, and so forth. Because it is, and then it is also peace. And so then there is the path, the noble truth of the path, which is which also has these 3 or 4 characteristics, like the path and the practice, and then the factor which liberates you, and so forth. And so, if you really think about these 4 noble truths, the teachings with all these 16 characteristics of them, you will really find that the teaching of the 4 noble truths is really profound and vast. So these are based on reasoning as well. So suffering comes from their own causes and conditions. Also from among these causes and conditions, you should cultivate correct and complete causes. If you put the wrong causes into practice, even if you work hard for a long time, the desired goal cannot be achieved. It will be like milking a cow's horn. Likewise, the result will not be produced when all the causes are put into effect. For example, if the seed or any other cause is missing, then the result, a sprout and so forth, will not be produced. Therefore, those who desire a particular result should cultivate its complete and unmistaken causes and conditions. So what this shows is the dependence in terms of causality, dependent causality, causal dependence. If you ask what are the causes and conditions of the final fruit of omniscience, I, who am like a blind man, may not be in a position to explain by myself, but I shall employ the Buddha's own words, just as he spoke them to his disciples after his enlightenment. So there is a mistake in the Tibetan spelling for the term reliance. He said, Vajrapani, Lord of the Secret, the transcendent wisdom of omniscience has its roots in compassion and arises from a cause, the altruistic thought, the awakening mind of bodhicitta, and the perfection of skillful means. So this text is a Madhyamaka text, a middle way philosophy, within which there are two divisions: those who accept self-characterized phenomena and those who do not accept it. The Master Shanti Rakshita and his disciples accept the first, and then and then within the Savatantrika Madhyamakas, there are two divisions as well. In the Sakya tradition, they are named as higher and lower Savatantrikas. Because of the following, the presentation of the Chittamatra, the Savatantrika Chittamatra and Yogacara Chittamatra Savatantrika Madhyamakas are called higher Savatantrika Madhyamakas, and then the Sotantrika Savatantrika Madhyamakas are called lower Madhyamaka. Kembo Kunga Wangchuk. And I asked once to give a transmission of the Madhyamaka Hridaya, but he said he didn't have the teaching on it. But then I requested him to write a commentary on it, so that when he gives the teaching on the commentary, it will be also in it will include the transmission on the text as well. So this text, Madhyamaka Hridaya, the essence of Madhyamaka, or the heart of Madhyamaka, was written by Bhava Viveka. So he was a great scholar, an amazing scholar. If you read his the torch of blazing, you will find how logical he was, how great logician he was. And so so Kamalashila was a follower of the Yogacara Savatantrika Madhyamaka, which rejected the externality of things. And so all the different philosophical schools within Buddhism teach and assert the causal dependency of things. So even animals to a certain degree know how certain effects come from their cause and conditions. But when you do critical analysis and reasoning, of course, we know the relationship between cause and effect, that effects come from. There is this indispensable relationship. The effect comes after the cause. But on the other hand, we call the cause as something which helps. It is something that helps in relation to what it helps. So if there is nothing to be helped, nothing which could be helped, then you cannot actually talk about helping something. And therefore, in relation to the effect, the cause is a cause. So cause and effect are only relative, in the sense that something which is brought about by its cause, in relation to that cause, it is an effect. Whereas something which that cause brings about as its effect is a cause in relation to that effect. Go on. Again. So His Holiness doesn't understand why people are clapping. Ready? Gegas. 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 Sungshe gas. Gegula mindu. Gegula mindu. Hello, hello, hello. Gegula mindu. Ya dengshe gang shugen sengi yuana mena. Dengshe gang yuan shugen sengi yuana mena. Inji sengi yuana ya shiro na. Tuji si. Gegula gyaurum je sung koya meba cha sung. So we have three things: the action, the actor, and the act that plays or the thing acted upon. So all these three are also mutually dependent on each other.
Relax, rest, rest. Okay. Now silent meditation. Ta khagal den kom je jurge. Oh, shu su musim marbe. Shu su musim sha. Ja dang di cham de ta ge zong, lo ge zong. Lo le zong. Ka. Lencha, lencha.